On today's podcast, we are meeting with Justin. He was an early employee at SpaceX, and he just has a very interesting story that I haven't even really heard the full story of, and I've been his friend for the past few years. So I am looking forward to hearing his story and also to get into how he thinks about once you kind of made it financially, what do you do? What's your purpose? We'll dive into those questions and more. Hope you enjoy. So hi.
Hi, Sam.
This is my first time actually recording in a car. The most interesting place I think I've recorded before is in a KTX.
Yeah, that's a good meeting place.
Yeah. I remember I was on the KTX going to Daejeon with my friend.
Yeah.
I think he was a second interview. He was a lawyer. He worked at Coupang and all that stuff. But I remember I was going with him and I said, hey, his name is Tommy. I said, hey, Tommy, it's kind of a crazy idea, but do you want to just film in the KTX? And if he said, Sam, that's kind of weird, I would have been like, no, it's okay, never mind. That was a stupid idea. But he said, let's do it. So I'm like, you really want to do it? And so I had to figure out, but basically it turned out really well. Like I did it just like this. I put the camera like this right in front of us. I pointed it at us, and we had to talk like this.
I know.
So we had to
The
talk like
Korean
this.
culture, they have to keep quiet. Right?
Yeah. So basically, we just put the mic on our lips.
Yeah.
And just like and actually the audio turned out really well.
Okay.
And it was kind of fun. It was really fun. So anyway, this podcast, I keep doing it because I find it interesting. And I always want to try new things.
Okay.
And this is a new thing. I've never
It's a new thing.
filmed in a Tesla Model X. By the way, this is the new version. And it has a huge window. I want to show this. This is a huge, that's the front windshield. I hear that it may get annoying sometimes when there's a lot of sun. But
Oh yeah, so I got the sun shield, which comes down to here.
right here.
But during the winter times, it's okay.
Wow.
And I usually park inside the garage, so not a problem.
So how do you like the Tesla Model X so far?
When I first got the Tesla, that was a life changer. That was 8 years ago.
No kidding.
When I got the Model 3.
Model 8 years ago. When was that?
2017.
2017.
Yeah.
That's about right when the Tesla Model 3 first came out.
Yep. Yeah, I got the serial number like 1700 or something.
Wow.
So that was a life changer. This is
Wait. Can you explain why it was a life changer?
so that time I was commuting from my home to Hawthorne, which was about hour and a half. No, El Segundo actually. No, it was Hawthorne.
Hawthorne is where SpaceX?
Yeah.
Were you still working at SpaceX at that
Right,
time?
right.
Okay, you were still
So-
working there.
Freeway at the time, it gets really congested. So I was driving like in a traffic all the time, right? So if I turn on the autopilot, having the auto steering, that was a life changer.
So just so some people may not know, autopilot is basically two things. One is it maintains the speed,
Maintains the speed.
in front of the car. So
Yep.
if the car in front of you speeds up, it speeds up. If it brakes, it brakes.
That's correct.
The second thing it does is it keeps you in your lane.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So
it does it very well.
does it very well.
Even at low speed, because I think
Yes.
before
Yes.
it was only at high speed that it was able to work. I did have a like smart cruise on the Toyota before, so that was good when I'm driving a long distance, like on a very deserted highway.
Yeah.
But in a traffic situation, you
Oh.
can't really do it. So
Totally,
having
totally.
this Model 3, commuting hour and a half, I was able to take a nap actually. So I actually felt refreshed when I arrived at work.
What to think of that?
Well, I know I wasn't supposed to, but half dozing off.
Half
Right?
dozing up. Half dozing up.
But you know what? When you're driving, just being able to close your eyes for a few seconds, that really helps.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know that may sound bad, but I know what you mean because it's like for a few seconds, but also you do have a co-pilot effectively.
Yeah.
You're not like keeping your eyes off closed for 5 minutes or anything. It's for a few seconds.
Right.
But I think it's the same thing as like when you're super sleepy and you're driving locally and
And
you're
we're
at a
going
stoplight,
slow.
or you're just at a stoplight,
Yeah.
and then you're at a red. What do? You just like even for
That's
3
right.
seconds, and you open your eyes every few seconds. You're like,
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, green. But it's like, what I do is I kind of do this, and then when the car moves, I know we're moving, and then I kind of wake up. But even like those it's not even a micro nap, it's like a nano nap.
Yeah.
It still helps.
That really helps. So that really improved the quality of life. And now with the Model X, what's changed was the utility of this car. It's very, I mean, it has a lot of cargo space. And besides, when I got this car, I didn't get it at like the lowest price because that's when they started dropping price.
Yeah.
But then they gave me 3 years of supercharging.
Oh yeah,
car,
that's why you're here.
Yeah.
He's supercharging that. That's right.
So I have it until next year. I get free supercharging, and then, especially with my business, I started doing my business 2 years ago. So I'm meeting a lot of people. So if I were driving gas car, then that would be a lot of money and maintenance.
I think that's the interesting thing. So like there is kind of the money portion.
Yeah.
But I think for you maybe more than the money portion, it's the time and kind of mental space.
Time and maintenance.
Maintenance.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What do you mean by that?
All right. So when I was getting a new car, I was debating between getting I like sporty vehicle. So should I get a BMW?
Yep.
Or Tesla? About the same price, right? So with the BMW, I was considering the style may be a little bit nicer. The upholstery might be a little bit nicer. But now I have to put in premium gas all the time, which is expensive. And because I'm kind of cost conscious, I'll go to Costco. So when I go to Costco to fill up gas, there's usually a long wait. So about 30 minutes that I have to waste every week or twice a week. Then I gotta do oil change every 6 months. I have to check the brake and replace brakes every year. And I've known that BMWs do not have a good reliability record, so I have to take into shop maybe every other year. That really adds up, not just in cost, but then the cost of time. So with this car, my experience with the Model 3 for the past 8 years is that I have not taken in for any long duration of time.
Really?
Almost at all, no.
Yeah, because let's see, there's no oil changes because electric car.
Except for the warranty, like repairs or replacement features.
Tire rotations.
Sure, tire rotations and then replacing tires. Other than that, yeah, nothing to replace. So, and then when they do some services, they just usually come in just to take care of those.
Yeah.
So huge saving on time. So
and then
anyway.
they also have the mobile service. Like actually yesterday, like one of the panels, when we picked up the Model Y, it was coming off and we kept trying to push it back. It didn't work.
Yeah.
So I called them up. I said, there's a service center in Buena Park about 20 minutes from here.
Yeah.
And then another option showed up, which was mobile service. And that is Tesla comes to you. So
yeah, it's very convenient.
Yeah, I signed up for that. They came yesterday. I was actually at your place.
Oh, yeah.
I was at your place, and that's who called me, and they said, "Hey, is it okay if I go into the car?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, that's fine. The panel, just if you can fix it, that'd be great." Do I need to unlock the car for you? He's like, "No, I can unlock the car." He unlocks the car, and then I think like we're just talking, and then about 30-40 minutes later, I get a notification that they're done.
Yeah.
And I come back and it's fixed, and I'm like, "That's amazing that the car dealership will come to me."
Oh yeah.
To fix the car.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind blowing.
And the car is very simple, so they could usually, do it mobile service.
Right.
There's one interesting episode that was life changing. So, I was driving. My wife called me.
Okay.
Said that she left her phone in the car, I think, and then she locked the trunk. She closed the trunk.
Oh, right.
So usually in those cases, I would run home, grab the spare key, and then go pick her up, right?
Yep.
Then I just remembered, hey, we have a Tesla. I just looked at my mobile app, opened the phone, opened the door for her. How easy was that?
I have a similar story.
Yeah.
I was on a business trip in Paris, and my wife called me. Claire called me and she said, "Hey, what did she say? She says like either something. Oh, my phone died, and we had a Tesla Model 3.
Yeah.
My phone died, and I need to hurry up and go somewhere. And I'm in Paris, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? But I'm like, oh yeah, I have a Tesla. I said,
right.
hold on. I put it on speakerphone. I went into the Tesla app, and then I see my car, and I pressed unlock, and then I also pressed the start button. And if you press the start button, the person has about 3 minutes, and they can start the car. It's only a one-time thing,
Yeah.
but they can start the car. So I unlocked it, pressed the start button, and she's like, and she was using someone else's cell phone. She was with someone else, and she's like, oh, thanks, honey. I was like, thanks, and then I hung up, and then it kind of hit me, the craziness of the situation.
Oh yeah.
I'm in Paris. She's in Boston. I just unlocked the car for her.
Yep. Yeah. And the other day I was in Florida, and my cousin said he wanted to come in and just do some work at my house. So I could use a garage opener in the car and just open the garage for him, and then he could.
Oh, because the car was parked in the garage.
In the driveway.
So you remotely triggered your car's garage opener.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. It's like home automation hacks.
So enough about Tesla. I think there's one myth though. So before I was Elon's, employee for the Elon's company, people always ask me, so did you get any discount when I got my first Tesla? No discount. I think I paid premium actually. Yeah.
That's funny. That's kind of like, so people in the military, a lot of police officers are military. So if you get pulled over for a cop pulls you over, what they kind of teach you in training, they're like, hey, look, we try to have each other's backs. So when they ask for your driver's license, you can like accidentally give your military ID, or you have a sticker that's like proud Marine or whatever. I really dislike those stickers, but the reason I do like it is because they know.
Oh yeah.
And then you're like, oops, and then sometimes they'll say, no, your driver's license, and then there's nothing you can do. But sometimes they'll be like, all right, just be careful. So I think it's kind of what you expect.
Yeah.
But it's almost like I see you at the dealership. You're like, oh, hi, well, I like a Tesla Model X. Let me look for my wallet. Oops, there's my SpaceX business card.
Yeah. I think one time that helped out was when I first got my car. I actually lost my adapter, and then the guy at the Tesla dealer gave me a free adapter.
Because
it was like $80.
Because he knew that you worked at a fellow
like that.
Elon Musk company?
Yeah, something like that. And then I just ended up sending him a T-shirt too.
So you're really nice.
Yeah, but that was the beginning. Yeah.
Well, Justin, I think, I have a place where I would like to start our conversation. Sure. Because you chose it for me.
Okay.
Yesterday I was talking with Justin, and we were talking about like how far back I like to go in these interviews. Some people are like, oh, like when you started at SpaceX, but I was talking about I like to go back, and you said I know exactly where we should start, which was your grandfather.
Yeah.
Being a Korean Marine.
Right.
So tell me, why did you want to start with that?
Well, I usually, when I meet people, I try to find connections. What are some of the common grounds that we have? I knew Sam was a Marine, right? So my grandfather was a Marine, and then I think his life had a very deep connection to who I am today. So, and I think Sam wanted to know more about, my life and my past and things like that. So I thought that would be a good start.
Yeah, I love it. And by the way, I think if you were a Korean Marine and he were your grandfather, the Korean Marines I think started around the Korean War. It's fairly new. It was like 1950s.
Yeah.
So he must have been one of the first ones.
He was one of the first ones, and so my grandfather, he avoided getting drafted by the North Korean army. So he was going around.
So he lived in North Korea?
No, he wasn't in North Korea. He was near Incheon.
Oh, Incheon. Okay.
Yeah. But during that time, during the war, so he avoided, like he was trying to hide in different places, as far as I know. And then after the Korean War, so he was in the Marines. And then after he was a very smart man. He was the oldest of the 7 children.
And it was pretty normal in Korea at the time to have many children.
Yeah, and then he self-taught himself English and Japanese.
Wow.
So he had a very great desire to learn. So he did that. He was working as a scribe in the Marines, and then because of that, his work, he was recommended to work for the United Nations force in Korea at the time. So he worked as a translator between the UN force, mostly of Americans, and the North Koreans, translating between English and Korean.
Wait, North Koreans?
Yeah, he was at the DMZ.
Oh, got it.
So he was when he was at the negotiation table translating between the North Koreans and the United Nations force. He happened to be at when there was an axe incident, axe murder. He was there.
Yes, I had heard. Wow, I read about that.
Yeah.
That it was, I think called something axe. They were trying to chop down a tree.
Yeah, they were trying to chop down the tree because
South Korea was trying to chop down the tree or something?
It was American force, the UN force. They were trying to chop down the tree because from the guard post, they were blocking the view of the North Korean activities. So they're trying to chop it down.
Wow.
While they're doing that, the North Korean soldiers came, charged at them, and then they killed 2 American soldiers with axe.
Yes. Over. Yeah.
Take a break.
Yes. Justin doesn't know. I don't hit pause. I just do it.
All right. We just finished supercharging. So
yes.
We're back.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was an interesting time, right? So after that.
By the way, I just want to add some details because, interestingly enough, I first read about that incident when I was taking a political science class when I was a foreign exchange student at Yonsei University.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in my dorm room reading about it, and I was shocked. And I think it was so the story is they were trying to cut it down, and then North Koreans came and they told the American forces don't do that, and they said no, the tree is coming onto our side. Yeah. We're gonna cut it. They cut it, and then the North Koreans kind of surrounded them, and they basically said kill them, and they killed the soldiers.
Yeah.
And this could have been an international incident.
This could have restarted the war.
This
the war was at the ceasefire still today, so it could have triggered another war.
Yeah, and what I understand is back in Washington, they're like, we have to send the message. So I think they called it Operation Paul Bunyan, and to cut down the tree. So to cut down this tree, they sent U.S. forces, but they also sent special forces and Korean special forces, and it's a huge entourage.
Yeah.
And then they basically cut the tree down, and it was okay, but that was a huge incident. And I remember reading about this, and at the time I was in the reserves in the military, and it's a very interesting thing. I'm a Korean American.
Yeah.
I'm in the U.S. military at the time, and then I'm reading about this, and I'm like, my blood was boiling. I was like, oh my gosh, how can you do this?
Yeah.
And your grandfather was there.
Yeah, he was there. So, I think he's gone through those very, tumultuous times in the Korean history. There was a lot of tensions between the North Korea, South Korea. So after he retired from the United Nations, which was 1977. Yeah, 1977. U.S. government offered him to immigrate to the United States.
No kidding.
And for him, he really had a good deal because at that time, because Koreans are only allowed to bring about $1,000. That's the maximum cash they could bring out of country because Korea was very short on dollars, right? So U.S. government, what they did was they offered him a deal where he would come to immigrate to U.S. Instead of giving him money in Korea, they gave him $30,000 to start his business, settle in U.S.
What was the purpose of inviting him to the U.S.?
Because he served the United Nations.
Oh, it was like a thank you.
As a thank you. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because he worked almost close to like 20 years there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you know what rank he
Oh, I
left?
do not know the details. Yeah.
Got it.
But he worked as a civilian though in the United Nations force, not as a military officer.
Oh, I thought he was in the Marines the whole time.
Well, no, he was Marines, but then he got a job at the United Nations
Got it.
force.
Got it. Oh, I
as a
see. I see.
translator.
I see. Okay. So he got this amazing offer.
Yeah.
What happened then?
So that's when he came to America, and then he started a business, just a small grocery store
Where did he go?
in the valley, San Fernando Valley.
San Fernando Valley in California.
Yes,
Okay. That's a little north of LA, I think.
that's correct. Yeah, north of LA. That's where I grew up. And after he came here, his 6 children came with him. Or
6
5.
children. 5 children.
My mom being the oldest, and then she was married at the time. She wasn't able to get the green card along with him. So after he invited, it took her about 7 years
Okay.
to get the green card. So when she got the green card, she brought me and my brother to US to study.
You and your brother.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that is not all the children.
No, my sister left behind.
Right, right.
And after my mom brought 2 of us here, we lived at my grandparents' place, and then my mom maintained her green card for a couple of years, and then she gave it up, and then she just went, she stayed in Korea.
Right. And interestingly enough, this is kind of where our paths crossed, because we got to know you because our children went to the same school.
Yes.
You knew we were going to Korea, and I think you mentioned like, oh, my younger sister lives in
Yeah.
Korea. And so I'm like, oh, so we got to know her, and she was super, super helpful when we first arrived. Like a very simple thing was we didn't have a table where we were staying. It was like a temporary place. There was no table, and the kids had to do work. And so we're like, oh, shoot. And your sister, like, not only found the table using like the Korean apps and whatnot, but she transported the table to us.
Oh, wow.
And helped install it for us because she knew we didn't have a car.
Yeah.
And so, but that's just kind of one of the many things that she was super helpful with. But yes, I feel like I know your sister better than you.
Yeah, I think my sister and I share a lot of the same values, same mind. We pursue similar goals in life. And yeah, now back to my grandfather's story. So I say that his life has a deep connection to my life because I grew up with my grandfather.
Oh.
My mother was only 20 years younger than my grandfather.
Really?
They got married. My grandfather and grandmother got married when they were 19.
Wow.
They had the first child when he was 20 years old.
So your mom is oldest?
My mom is the oldest, and my mom's youngest sister is 20 years younger than my mom. So like 20 years between my grandma and my mom, and then 20 years between my mom and the youngest sister. So my mom basically, raised my aunt.
Wow.
Anyway, so my grandfather was like my father, right? My father figure. So he, I, of course, because he owned this dairy store, I worked there since I was like in junior high school.
So like when you say you work there, I feel like there are kids like nowadays where if they work at a store, it's just, they don't do a ton of work. I mean, some places they do, but a lot of places, like when I was growing up, it was much more involved. Like you were actually helping with the operations of the store. What was your experience like?
My experience was, so this was a family store, right? So I had a sense of ownership. My grandfather also instilled in us like work ethic and responsibility. He's not the type that would micromanage, but then he's a type, that was very clear on, what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. Then he will, let us figure out how to get things done. So when I was working at the dairy store, he'll pay me like hourly.
Oh, he actually paid you?
Yeah, that was my, man, that was good money too back then. I think it was like a minimum wage, but then as a junior high school, living at grandparents' place, like I really didn't have any, like really no expense to spend. So my biggest purchase was a really nice guitar when I was in high school. Yeah, I remember there was a really nice guitar.
Wait, for this job, did he just like one day say, hey, would you like to work? Or
No,
it was,
no, it was just given. Like everybody in the family worked.
you're part of this family.
It's a family business.
You're
Right?
part of the family. You're
Yes.
expected to do your work. Your part.
Exactly.
Your
Yeah.
part. And this dairy store, what type of work are we talking
Oh,
about?
it was fun. So dairy store had everything, right?
Is it just like milk?
So milk was the main thing. Dairy, because it Altadena dairy store, so it was a drive-in. So the cars would drive up, and
Okay.
then they'll say what they want. I'll go and grab the items. So I had to learn where the items were, what items we had, and then there are different brands. So get the items to the customers, bag it, take the money, calculate, run the cash register.
Cash. Mostly, I don't think.
Mostly cash. I don't think there was a credit card.
Credit
back
card,
then.
right? Or
Yeah, it was
or
mostly
check.
cash. Yeah. So cash. So make sure to have exact changes for them, and then get the items all bagged, and then hand it to the customer, and then customer drives away.
And were these customers, what were they mostly like Koreans? Were they
No, just local residents,
local residents or Americans?
Americans, and it always boggled my mind because we had Albertsons right across the street, which is market, right?
Oh yeah, the supermarket.
And they'll usually carry items that are cheaper. So I was curious, why would people want to come to dairy store and buy things that are, a few cents or a little bit more expensive than
Yeah.
market? They come because they like the convenience. So not all people think the same. So for these people, convenience is a value. And that's the value that we provide. And then people, they just sit in the car. We just, get all the items for them, hand it to them. Just like Amazon delivery nowadays.
That's like a really interesting realization about customers, about
Exactly.
business,
Yeah.
and it's. I feel like that could be definitely applicable beyond,
Yeah.
dairy store.
So those kind of values that I learned as a younger person really, when I do Amway business now, how I serve the customers, a lot of those things that I learned as a youth really helps me to process it, and then kind of really understand. Yeah, not everyone thinks the same, and then for each person, they have a different sense of value in different things.
So, in what other ways? So you're now living with your grandfather, and how long did you live with him for?
I lived there so I came to America when I was in 7th grade.
Seventh grade?
Yeah, and then when I graduated, I went off to college. So since then, I've lived away from, I've become independent after that.
So from 7th grade till 12th grade, you were
5 years.
He was your legal guardian,
Yes.
and so you lived in his home in San Fernando Valley.
Yeah.
Then you went to college.
In San Luis Obispo, which is Central California, between San Jose and Los Angeles.
Okay, so you went there to study
Mechanical engineering.
mechanical engineering. What led you to that?
Oh, I was always interested in being a scientist or engineer ever since I was in kindergarten.
Oh wow!
So
Was there something like a specific event that led to that, or?
I think it's just my creative nature. So I remember one of my elementary school project. I was very into like building these plastic models, right? Of like tanks and airplanes. But I really liked building models that had with the motors in it. So things moving parts. So these tanks were moving. And sometimes I'll just, break down these perfectly good models and then transform that into something others. And I just create my own thing. So one of my science projects when I was in elementary school was I used a leftover like a toothpaste box and then made a crane out of it using the parts from the like a plastic tank model. And then that was my science project. And I remember vividly that launching of a space shuttle in 1986, Challenger. So that, unfortunately, that's the one that blew up in the air.
Oh, that's right. There were school teachers.
Yep. Yeah. So I was watching it and then on the TV and then it blew up. So anyway, I was very interested in science. One of the drawings that I was of a space station. So I dreamt of like spacefaring, civilization and world and things like that, even from the youth. So I wanted to be an engineer. So after I finished my college.
By the way, your degree in engineering, was it aeronautical, so related
No,
to
it
space?
was just a mechanical.
Just mechanical. Okay.
Mechanical. So the twist in the story is, I wanted to study mechanical engineering. So, and then one of the company that was huge in sponsoring our school back then, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, was HP, Hewlett Packard.
Oh yeah.
So it was early 90s. Early 90s. That's when I first got to use the Next workstation created by Steve Jobs.
Wow.
So that was a 3D design. So we're transitioning from like a 2D design, drafting designs. I think I was like the engineering class where when I was a freshman, I was taking hand drafting classes.
Wow.
And then making those blueprints. These are not the blueprints as in, when people say of a blueprint, they don't know what that means. It's actually a blue dye. They have a dye machine. So the print actually comes out in a blue color. Okay. That's why it's called a blueprint.
And so this is like the schematics or design of some machine.
Well, I mean, but whenever it's not really a machine, but whenever you design like whether it be a machine or a house or anything like that, when you hand draft it, and then when you print it out, they print it out in this like a blue ink print. That's why it's called a blueprint.
Is there a reason for the blueprint? Like, why couldn't it be?
It's a ditto paper. So I don't know if you remember, like when you're maybe you may not remember, but when I was little, at the school, they call the ditto paper, which is like a blue ink, like a dye, like a carbon copy paper.
I kind of remember, like, you would get, like, I don't know, you're at school and they want to give you a receipt and they write.
Something like that. It's
and then they
close.
tear it out and give you your copy. Okay. So it's a blueprint. So you were hand doing it.
So I did that when I was in freshman year, but by the time I graduated, they're doing a 3D, like an inkjet print, So there was a time when a lot of technologies were changing.
Wow.
Renovations are happening, innovations are happening.
And how did, because I think that has connections to today with like the development of AI and just people. Yeah. So at the time, you were going from literally manually drawing.
Yes.
And it was transitioning to computer
drawing.
What were people's reactions to that? Like, what was your reaction? What were the other people's reactions to that?
So I think that contributed to this kind of changes in technologies, helped me to get my first job. But before I talk about that, let me just finish up what we're saying. So HP was a huge sponsor. So I thought I was going to get into the mechanical electronic industry, mechatronics. So I was studying robots, control systems. So HP was a huge on inkjet printers at the time, laser jet printers. And unfortunately, I didn't get jobs at HP, even though I went through multiple on-site interviews. So when you get on-site interviews, like you are very close to getting a job because you go through the phone screen, you go through like phone interviews, and right. But for some reason, I couldn't get a job. I really wanted to get out of California. I wanted to go to like Washington or Oregon. HP had a huge presence there. I'd really like up there. Anyway, when I was graduating, I got two offers. One from Intel, Silicon Valley, as a process engineer. And I got a job back home, San Fernando Valley, by this company called Rocketdyne. At the time, it was a division of a Boeing company, Rocketdyne.
And was your grandfather still living there at that time?
Yeah, my grandfather was there. So Intel paid $10,000 more, which was about 25% more back then for starting salary. But the job at Rocketdyne was a design engineer, and that's what I wanted to do.
Can you explain the difference between the process engineer job and the design engineer?
So Intel make chips, right? People know Intel. So in order to build chips, you have a lot of these very expensive machineries. So process engineers basically maintains, designs, or implements this kind of system to produce the chips.
Okay.
So as a mechanical engineer, you actually design the system or that machines that produce the chips.
Okay.
So
so that's process engineer, and then design engineer.
Design engineer was designing the rocket engines.
Okay.
At Rocketdyne.
Okay. And so when you were looking at these two and evaluating, what was kind of going through your head?
I chose the job that I wanted to do. rather than what paid more?
That's a very interesting decision because, for example, let's say you're in a survivor mentality. You just care about money because you got to survive. Then just like back then at the grocery store, you were thinking they should go to Albertsons. Of course, you can save money. In this case, with Intel, I can make more money.
Yeah.
I should obviously go there, but you found that there were certain customers that wanted convenience, and they chose a different path.
Yes.
You chose a different path this time as well.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to design rockets.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's like interesting. Like why did you decide to do what you wanted to do, rather than what you felt like the world would probably tell you to do?
So when I was in college, I worked as a lab monitor. They had a 3D design lab monitor. So it was like workstations. Back then, I told you we started designing on papers, but then Hewlett Packard donated this lab that had a 3D CAD, computer-aided design stations. So I did a lab monitor for about 3 to 4 years. So I really enjoyed like designing things on the 3D, being able to visualize, not just in a 2D, but in a 3D, and then be able to spin it around, and then put things together. So I chose a job where I could really employ that skill that I learned, and then I really thought that was a really great future. So.
And what's interesting is that is tied back to your time in kindergarten.
Rocket time. Yeah.
When you were physically manipulating it, but now you can do this in a digital sense.
And even crazier thing is, so I chose a job at Rocketdyne because they were transitioning from the 2D design platform. The 2D CAD, they had it, and then 3D CAD. Yeah. So, a lot of the old people, like you're asking, how many people handle those kind of transitions?
Yeah.
It was going to be hard for the company to train the old people new tricks. If they could hire new college graduates with the skills they already learned.
Were there new college graduates who were also a little resistant to this new technology or didn't really like it? They liked the old way?
I don't think so. I don't think college kids have. So the thing is, they don't really have the old skills anyway. And then the idea of the 3D design is it makes it easier for people to design and conceptualize things. So for college kids, there's no reason why not. It was very popular, to transition that.
That's really interesting. Yesterday I was talking to a co-founder of an AI startup, and we were talking about software engineering and AI. Yeah. And I was asking his opinion of like, what would you do? Because I remember talking to him right when ChatGPT came out, and I said, has this impacted you at all? And he said, yeah, this has impacted us because we don't really hire junior developers anymore. We only hire senior developers. And I'm like, oh, why? He's like, because the AI can do a lot of things that junior developers used to do. And he's like, we don't really need to. So I'm like, well, what advice would you give to either someone, a college graduate or whatnot? And he says, start with learning how to code with AI. Like it's a minimum. And even if you're in the job market and you're a junior developer, these new tricks you may not be as good as the old skill of coding directly as your competitors, but if you can use AI, you'll leapfrog them. And from a business standpoint, and we live in a capitalistic society. They will adopt anything that will save them money. Using AI to code will save you money because you can do more.
That's right.
And so they will pick you. So that's a kind of a way to hack getting ahead. And so it's interesting because that's fresh in my mind, and I'm hearing your story of that was also happening at the time in the 90s.
So think about it. That was a huge revolution because before I talk about that section, let me tell you a little bit about the company. So this is a crazy part. So I was inspired when I was young. My parents bought me this magazine, Life magazine, had a section on space. Talks about how the Saturn V rocket, the Apollo moon mission, and things like that. I thought that was really cool. That was when I was in elementary school, like getting inspired by all this, right? So as I started working at Rocketdyne, I realized that, hey, this is the company that developed all the rocket engines for the Saturn V rocket. And then it had displays of like a F1 engine, which was like a huge engine that, was part of the Saturn 1 stage 1. Then they built like the J2 engines, which were the upper stages of the Saturn V rockets, and they had displays of these engines and all the hardwares. And then this was like surreal, like my childhood dream.
Wow.
And then this is a company that actually built all the hardwares back in the 50s and 60s to send people to the moon. So I was really like, maybe this was meant to be. I was meant to be here.
Yeah.
Because I surely thought that I was going to get a job at HP and Silicon Valley and all that, but then I ended up coming here.
And
so
how did your family react to that decision? Because even though you're younger,
my family, like, they don't care.
Oh, really?
No.
Because, traditional Korean family, they want you to go the safe route, go to the, the Samsung, Intel was probably very safe.
So, you know what? So I grew up in an environment where my grandfather raised me to be very independent, right? So he's a type of person, when we were driving up to, college to check it out, about 3-hour drive from my home. And I barely got the driving license like a few months prior to that. My grandfather is the type that, just hands me the key. Hey, you drive? And then he'll just fall asleep on the passenger seat. And then I'll be like, so scared to drive. But 3-hour driving.
What do you think led him to do that?
I think for him, he was a very confident man. So like he trusted people. Like maybe, I don't know, maybe his background as the oldest son and then being a leader, like once you entrust you with the task, he lets you do it.
I think that's very unique.
Yeah.
So having spent like the past 2 years in Korea working with Koreans, generally they follow a military-like structure because the workforce is mainly men. They all have to go through the military.
Yeah.
And so it's a very hierarchical, and the society in itself is already hierarchical.
Yeah.
So micromanagement is the norm. As a leader, micromanaging is the norm, and pushing your team harder and harder is the norm, generally in a hierarchical society. But your grandfather was the opposite of that.
But I think that's also the sign, not micromanaging. I think micromanaging is a sign of distrust in your subordinates. Like once you train them well, once you know that they could do the job, then I think you don't have to micromanage.
Does that mean that he trusted you?
I think he did.
Were there other people that he did not trust that you saw that his behavior was different with them?
So my friends will get really scared of calling at my home because he had preferences. My friends who are very confident, who could really speak the agenda correctly, let's say when they call my home, and then my grandfather receives the phone. Back then it was just a home telephone, right? There's no mobile phone, right? Yep. And then all the phones are connected in the house, so he'll just pick it up and then he'll bluntly say, "Hey, why did you call?"
Why did you call?
To my friend. And then my friend says, let's say, I wanted to ask Justin about homework or something like that. Okay, then he's cool, right? But then if they either call after 9 p.m., if they're not being responsible, he'll get really upset. And then my friends knew that, like, not to really get on my grandfather's nerves. Yeah.
So if they called after 9 p.m., he didn't say, "Why did you call?" He would say something else.
Oh, yeah, earful, right? You're not supposed to call this late, do that, whatever. So he has a strict boundary.
Yeah.
But within the boundary, he lets you figure out how to get things done. And then I think that gave me this liberating, sense.
And seeing this type of leadership, because I think what's so important, I've been learning lately, is for young men to have role models.
Yeah.
That where they learn these types of skills and traits and values. You see your grandfather doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Of trusting you and just giving you utmost trust to the point where if you screw up, he could die when you're driving up. You could die, but he's just...
A couple of occasions.
So
yeah.
He falls asleep, but he doesn't tell you this. He doesn't say, like, "I trust you, blah, blah, blah." He's just like, "Here's the keys."
Yeah.
So it's basically through action.
That's right.
You're kind of absorbing these values.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I tell you this because so I grew up in that environment, and then my parents, I've been living away from my parents, right, since seventh grade.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much like my dad, on a few occasions told me, hey, I trust you to make the best decisions. So they really didn't get any involved. They didn't get involved in like making my decisions.
I also wonder, like, if there's a place where your grandfather kind of let. So, for example, your grandfather outranks your parents in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even if your parents were like, I think that's a wrong decision, your grandfather has already kind of given you his blessings. So, would they kind of feel hesitant? Like, if he's like, hey, pick whatever you want. If they came in and said, hey, I think you should pick Intel.
Yeah, no, I cannot even think they would do that. Yeah, they.
Is it just because of their grandfather's influence, or is it just because they themselves are also, like your grandparents, very kind of independent?
I don't think they were. I think they were more of a micromanager type.
Oh,
my mom would be.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because my dad was like busy at work.
Right.
My mom would be more micromanager type. I think that's in my childhood. I remember like some tense moments with my mom because I wasn't really good at school, especially I really sucked at math. So I remember getting scolded for not doing well at school and things like that. And then it was for me. What I remember was it's just suffocating. When I got micromanaged, it's really not a good environment for me to thrive. So I think coming to America, being away from my parents, being with grandfather who was very like had a strict boundary but lets you do like figure things out. It was very liberating, and then it really helped me to thrive.
Okay, so
in my life.
Back to the Intel decision. So your family, do you think your mom wanted you to go to Intel?
I don't think she would have any idea what I was doing.
So that's the other secret. If you want to get away from micromanaging, pick a job where your parents have no idea what it is.
Yeah, she just knows that I went to college and then now I'm getting a job. So
and that was her kind of check boxes.
Yeah, and then my aunt was a great resource because she was working at Rocketdyne, or she did work at Rocketdyne, even though she moved on to Boeing. She was a software engineer.
Oh.
Yeah. So she was the one who referred me to this job at Rocketdyne to work for her old manager.
Oh. I think another interesting thing, going back to what you previously said, was that the kind of the aha moment of you realizing you're working at a company that's connected to your childhood. I think what's interesting about that point is if you didn't have that moment of inspiration in your childhood, this moment wouldn't have felt special. So other people, they're just kind of walking, Rocketdyne, whatever, Saturday, I don't really care.
Yeah.
You walk by and you're like, wow, because and that moment, that seed was planted when you were in kindergarten.
Oh yeah.
So it's very interesting with like the importance of like wonder, like I feel at an early age to be able to explore, to do things that really inspire, because you never know, this may, I don't know, just lead to something very interesting in the future.
Yeah, it's not for every kid. I try to take my kids to SpaceX when I was working there. So at the time, I would work on the weekends too. When I go to work at weekends, then I'll take my kids and then let them, see the place. But then neither of two kids, got interested in engineering. So yeah, it may or may not hit with some kids, but then I think it's important to give them a lot of different experiences and then let them see what it is. Because in the future, everything comes together somehow.
Okay.
Their past experience.
So you're at Rocketdyne now. So you're working at Rocketdyne as a design engineer.
Yeah. So that story of, you talked about the AI and then how the old and the new and then how. So to give you a sense, what I realized was that this 3D design was revolutionary because in the 60s and 50s, when they were designing the spacecraft, Apollo spacecraft, Downey, the city like right next where we are right now.
We're in Norwalk. Downey's right next door.
Downey's right next door. Downey had a huge Boeing factory. They were building a spacecraft. At one point, they were hiring 30,000 engineers.
Wow.
To just work on the spacecraft. But if you look at the old photos, what they had was like this, like a hangar, like an aircraft hangar type, huge buildings, rows and rows of desks, a drafting desk of people designing on the paper, every components, hundreds of thousands of different components that they're designing. Now, one designer with a 3D design could replace hundreds of designers.
Like literally hundreds of.
And yeah, so if you think about that, because that time when they're designing paper, they create it, they try to put it together, they erase it, and then revision after revision, see how long it would take. I think that's similar to how this AI software is gonna replace a lot of software engineers, right?
Yeah.
Because before everybody was coding like basic things, and then somebody was in the software like an architect. But now you only need an architect. Then you just bring blocks together.
And I think that's like really interesting because people nowadays, you know, I'm talking to people in Korea here, they're afraid, especially parents are afraid of AI and how it's going to change everything. But this is not a completely new concept. We have seen this in the past.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm 52 years old, so I think I've lived in a very interesting time where things are getting accelerated, and then the old gets replaced with the new, and then with that, efficiency improves. And who knows, in 10 years, what do you think will get it replaced? A lot of things. But then a lot of new exciting things will be coming up. So
yeah, I just read this morning, there was like, I don't know if this is true, but I think it said something about Bill Gates' law. And he says people always overestimate what can be done in 1 year.
Yeah.
But they always underestimate what can be done in 10 years. It's like people feel like it's not moving at all, and then suddenly it just, boom, it just changes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, ChatGPT was only 2 years ago.
Right.
That is crazy. Okay, so you're at Rocketdyne, you're working as a design engineer, you're like, wow, this is the place that created the Saturn rocket. Oh my gosh, like this is amazing. Then what happens? Like,
from there, like, I could tell you a lot of different things, but how do you want to go? Like my
whatever.
career-wise?
Yeah, sure. Well, it could be career, personal, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whatever comes to your mind first.
Yeah, so working at Rocketdyne was very fun. I got to work in the advanced, what do you call that? Advanced programs? I think that's what they called. So advanced programs. And then I went through, so I started working after I got my bachelor's. And then I started my master's program at USC because at the time Boeing had this thing called the Learning Together program where they actually pay for the college.
Oh, that's amazing.
So master's program at USC, that time just the tuition was about $30,000. Wow. So the company paid for it. Yeah. So I got my master's.
So you're working basically like, you're working in the daytime and then in nighttime.
Yeah,
it's a part-time program.
Yeah, they also had a satellite program where they will have a satellite dishes and then they'll get the remote. So
when you say satellite program, they literally had a satellite dish. Because nowadays they don't have satellite.
Nowadays they didn't have it. Before, so to do the remote learning, what they had to do was, so they would have like classes live happening at USC, and they'll have the broadcasting cameras recording it, sending the signal to an antenna. Antenna will send it up to satellite. Satellite will send it to the remote location, and then receive that signal.
So it's basically like live streaming. The old version of the original version of live streaming.
Yeah, and very expensive version.
Very expensive version. That is interesting. The concept of with better technology, the price goes down, which means more people can access it.
Of course.
Now, any teenager can grab their phone and start live streaming because the cost is so low. And back then, though, you said it was so expensive that only big companies like Boeing could afford this.
Yeah, because you have to have the huge satellite dishes and all the broadcasting capability.
Yeah.
So I did half the class on campus. So I'll drive to the downtown LA to USC campus, like half of my classes, and the other half I'll just do remote. Mm-hmm. So I graduated, and they said the deal was that once I graduate, after 3 years, the Boeing will give $10,000 worth of stocks.
Okay.
$10,000.
Cool.
A stock. As a, hey, you know, good job. You finished the school.
Yep.
And then you've been contributing to the company. Here's a reward for that. So 2.5 years into it, I got married.
Okay.
And then I moved on to Fullerton, which is about So I did about a 2 hours commute.
Wow. Wait, round trip?
No, each way, 2.5 hours.
4 hours round trip,
every day,
Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday. So I'll take the commuter train
That is crazy.
and the commute to Chatsworth.
Okay, so you didn't drive. Okay, phew.
I'll drive sometimes, but it
Oh
takes
my
about
God.
the same time
Oh my
because going through the downtown is really like a hell, right? So I did that for about a year by then, like 2.5 years.
Oh, so you were trying to like grind through
Right
it.
through it, yeah. And the Boeing decided to sell Rocketdyne to Pratt and Whitney at the time, and then I was gonna. Then I decided, well, it's time to make a career change because I can't. This commute is not sustainable.
But the job, you enjoyed it.
Job was okay, but then another thing about this advanced program is that they were always working on the government programs, right? So government programs is basically the government gives you some money for the company to develop technologies. Oftentimes, these type of designs stay on paper.
So a lot of prototyping.
A lot of prototyping, so very few occasions it will make into actual hardware.
So you had this running desire of like, maybe this will make it. Didn't make it. Maybe this will make. Didn't make
All
it.
the time,
And so
yeah.
you had this desire of like, I want to see something out there in the real world.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Fortunately, but the experience at Rocketdyne was very, very good because I got to work with these original designers who designed. These are guys like 70 years old, 80 years old, right? They call them gray beards. And then they worked on the original spacecraft or in the rockets that flew in the 50s and 60s.
Crazy.
Yeah, so to be working with those kind of legends, right? It was like, man, that was amazing. So I learned a lot from those guys. But anyway, so time to change the job. So, but my primary reason for changing the job was to really cut down the commute.
And I'm sure like your wife wasn't happy about it, or maybe
yeah.
she felt bad for you.
Well, I had my son in 2004, so it was like about a year. He was about 1 year old. Then the guy that I used to work at Rocketdyne, he was on a program. He got a new job down in El Segundo, so he told me to just come check it out. You know, so I said, okay, it's a very small company that nobody knows about, nobody has heard about, but he said it was interesting, so I went down.
And at the time, you had only worked at a big company. Now you're looking at a small company.
Yeah, at the time, Boeing was at 200,000 employees.
Yeah. So, but in your mind, you were still open to this idea of a small company.
I think at the time I was just looking at whatever, right?
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Just be open.
And
Okay.
then, but then thing is, I have to admit, I had that kind of Asian mentality. Hey, I'm working for this great Boeing company, you know, 200,000 employees.
What do you mean by Asian mentality?
Asian mentality is that Asians typically like to, they're very, very, what do you call that? Societal. But they want to be associated with big and great.
Big and
Something
great
that's
names.
famous.
Big logos.
Yes.
Boeing.
And
Harvard.
that gives you identity.
Ooh.
Right.
So
So,
you're coming from Boeing though.
yeah.
You have a big name.
Big name. So I was really proud of, you know, who I was as an employee of
Yep.
Boeing. You know, I'll be displaying my badges, you know. That was my sense of pride. And then I just went to interview with this small company in El Segundo, and yeah, whatever. Like I didn't even really prepare for the interview or whatever. I didn't really think that was a like real interview anyway. But I went there, and then the day I was to go interview, he said it was a very small company. So he said, you know what? Actually the VP of the department, he's not gonna be in town. He's traveling, whatever. And then so it will just be a manager and then like a couple other coworkers. So it'll be very easy,
Sure.
you know, just casual. So I went in, you know, interview. It was pretty cool. You know, I got to connect with a couple of the former, you know, coworkers because they were at that new company and then working. So it was pretty, you know, nice. You know, seemed very interesting. They're trying the new thing. And let me see. I think one of the main reasons besides cutting my commuting time was I wanted to go to a place where I wanted to learn. And be able to build hardwares.
Right. And then see it in the real world.
See in the real world, and then be able to gain skills, because this was about like 10th year in my career.
And
I didn't feel like
what year? 2000
2005.
2005, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I started working in 1995.
Okay.
So I wanted to really build a skill as an engineer that could be applicable to other areas. So I wanted to grow. So there's a growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And then this company was building hardware. That's great. So, interview with a couple of people, it went okay. And then I guess the HR comes in and tells me, oh, you know what? The founder of the company happens to be here today, so he wanted to interview you too. So Elon walks in. Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Yeah, guy named Elon Musk.
Yeah. So interesting guy. He had some strong accents, but we just went around to the factory floor, just going around the rocket, talked about a few things. I told him why I was leaving Boeing, because I didn't feel like I was growing, always on the paper, I wanted to try different things, and then talked about how things could be improved with the designs, more efficient, cut down the cost, things like that. And then I guess somehow it worked, and then they offered me a job. So,
do you remember anything about during that walk around?
Yeah.
Anything that kind of stood out to you about Elon? Other than his accent.
Again, I think I don't remember all the details, but I remember talking about why I wanted to.
Him asking you about why, or you talking
asking, and then probably I was telling him why. Why this new space was necessary versus the old space.
And for you,
yeah,
you came at a really interesting and good time, because you had kind of gotten a taste of the old in college, and then but you went to the new, and you were like, oh my gosh, this is so obvious.
Yeah.
Even though maybe the graybeards or older people didn't see it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is like saving hundreds of people's work. But then in Boeing, I'm sure like there was red tape, and you wanted to move faster and faster.
That's right.
But you kept hitting that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so and even tying that back to kind of the way that you were raised with your grandfather, it's like there were certain constraints, but you were able to be free. But I would imagine in Rocketdyne you didn't have that freedom anymore.
Yeah, to give you an example, Rocketdyne was very unionized. So Boeing, let's say as an engineer, like I'm working on a hardware, like a prototype, right? I cannot carry that prototype across the company, because that's a violation of the union. I'm taking job away from the union people.
Oh my gosh.
So and also to get things approved, like the design wise, I have to get through layers and layers of people to get actually things approved. So I remember talking about those kind of efficiency improvements, how things could be a lot faster, it could be improved. And then so when I started working, the reality check was this. I'll design something, right? And then as soon as I started designing, finish the design, they'll just take it to the shop and they start cutting the metal chips.
So this is at the small company called SpaceX?
SpaceX.
Okay.
And then I was kind of scared. Like, it dawned on me, did I really do the right job? They're already cutting the material, because at Rocketdyne, we're going through reviews after reviews to make sure everything's correct. Everybody's reviewing things.
So like psychologically, you're like, even if I made a mistake, it'll be caught somewhere.
Yes. That kind of mindset.
A little safety blanket.
That kind of mindset. It's like, oh, somebody will find out, if there's something wrong. But then now I have to make sure that everything's good. Otherwise, something's gonna blow up. And that realization made me, oh man, I better do due diligence on what
I gotta up my game.
Yes, definitely.
Which is great in hindsight, because you were looking for growth.
I was looking for growth, but I don't think I really understood what I was asking for.
Yeah.
And I think I also had an entitlement mindset, because here's the thing. I mean, Boeing has a big company, has a full IT, department and all that, right? So the first day I show up at SpaceX, they just give me a huge box. Hey, here's your computer. I set up my own computer.
Oh.
And then I set up my own computer, all the connection. Fortunately, I was pretty familiar with the PC, so I did all that. Then I had a box like, set aside, cubicles, right? And then next day, a VP walks, hey, why don't you throw the trash away? And then I asked him, well, isn't there a janitor? No, that's your job, just throw the trash away. Talk about personal responsibility, right? And then small startup company.
And at the time, how many people were at SpaceX?
About 100.
So 100 people, this is around 2005.
Yeah.
So about 100 people at SpaceX, okay.
Yeah, so when I left SpaceX in 2019, which was about 14 years later, I was employee like number 47. So about, yeah.
And when you left, how many employees were there at SpaceX?
Oh, I think at the time there was 5,000.
Okay, so
or 7,000.
Growing a lot. So you're at the point where it's truly a startup.
Yeah.
You're taking out the trash, which is interesting because in your earlier experience, you grew up in a household where it was expected. You work at the dairy, you do this
And
stuff.
somehow I lost that.
You lost it.
Yeah.
Because you went to Boeing,
Yeah.
which was supposed to be this great place, but actually you lost something that was
Yes.
a core part of you that I think you did like about it. And you kind of like rediscovered it.
I think so. That was kind of fun in a sense. Maybe just a little bit about the dairy store. So when I was a junior high school, I had to memorize all the brands of cigarettes. I memorized all the brands of liquors that we're carrying, alcohols. So when customer asks, hey, Doral or Virginia Slim, I have to know like Marlboro Red, Marlboro Menthol. I didn't smoke. And I had to memorize all that brands, everything, right?
And alcohol.
And then at the end of the day, I had to break down all the boxes to throw into recycling bins. I had to close down, So having that sense of ownership, I had that.
It's not an ownership. So part of ownership, I think, is the work ethic. It's like,
Yeah.
if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. I've got to do it.
Yeah.
And so now you're back at SpaceX and this startup.
Yeah.
And you're like, where's the IT department? Like, why aren't they setting up where are my slippers?
Yeah, so that was a fun time. Yeah. Let me see. What else did I want to say? So I feel like as an engineer, I really grew a lot. And there's an illustration. So one thing that I told Elon, I remember, was about the cost of the bolt that we're using for turbo machinery. I remember one bolt that goes into this turbo pump, it costs rocket tank $2,000.
Dang, must be a special bolt.
I mean, it's a special bolt, right? All right. But it's not just simply the material cost or the manufacturing cost. So to make sure this bolt is intact through all the harsh conditions, you have to go through a bunch of analysis. You have to go through a lot of testing, both destructive testing and non-destructive testing. So non-destructive could be X-ray, ultrasonic, penetrant test, and then destructive test. They'll take a sample of 10, and then every 10 bolts they'll break 1 or 2 bolts. And then these are very expensive material bolts, right? So $2,000 sounds very expensive, but if you consider all the work that goes into it, hey, but they just accept it as is. It's how it's supposed to be.
Never question
And
it.
once you have that, you don't change it. So SpaceX had a different mindset. You know what? Just do a basic, and then if it blows up, blows up. Make it bigger next time. Make it out of different material next time. Test it until it survives or something like that, right?
So there was a much bigger, it's not only appetite for risk, it's just a different mentality. Like Boeing is like, hey, we got the money, we got our foot in the door, let's keep the money coming.
Yeah.
And SpaceX is like, no, this is dumb. Like, let's just test it.
Yeah. Of course, now their reliability is a lot better. They have to be more serious now. But back then, I think it's the stage of that development. In the initial development, you can't afford to spend all that money analyzing to the nth degree because
you're a startup.
You just can't afford it.
Yeah, you're a startup.
You just got to build something, test it, and then see if it works, and then make a tweak as you go. So, yeah, I really learned a lot from that kind of mindset. Yeah.
Hmm.
What else you want
Well,
to know?
I mean, so you were there for 14 years.
Yeah.
And then what happened after that? So
Oh,
2019.
yeah.
Because I want to get to what you did after that, but also I would also love to tap into like your philosophy in like money and wealth. Just
Okay.
yeah. So just like so those are kind of areas I think would be fun to talk about.
Yeah. So actually today I could leave a little bit late. I could leave at like 9:30. So
Okay.
we should be good. Yeah. Take a step back. So career at SpaceX. I started working on the engines, the booster engines, which was the Merlin engines back then. Then the work at SpaceX was interesting because they're very short on staff. There's no shortage of work. You get to work on whatever, you could choose, right? So working from the engine, I wanted to look at the bigger things. So I started looking at the plumbings and stage systems. So I worked on the Falcon 1, the second stage. I took that over and then I did a whole system, plumbing and tank design and all that, and engines. And because of my work on that, and then it flew successfully, I was given a responsibility of designing the propulsion system for the Dragon spacecraft. So Dragon spacecraft is what saved SpaceX from bankruptcy.
No kidding.
2008, they were running short of money, and then finally after fourth try, SpaceX succeeded, sending the Falcon 1 rocket, right?
So me and my Liam, we read Elon's biography, and I remember talking about SpaceX, and there was a point where it was not only SpaceX being on the brink of bankruptcy, but it was also Tesla at the same time.
At the same time, same week, and they're saved in the same week, right before Christmas, but totally independent. So it was such a coincidence, right?
So I imagine from your perspective, it was very stressful, wasn't it? Like
no, I wasn't the owner of the company. I was just an employee. That's a good thing about being an employee is that you don't really care about the company. Unless your paycheck stops coming in, which was about to happen.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, weren't you kind of stressed out? Like, wasn't your wife kind of stressed out about that?
Not exactly, because when I went to SpaceX, I had an expectation that this is such a small company, startup company, it could fail at any time. My maximum was 2 years. If the company survives beyond 2 years, I'll be happy. That was my mindset.
And when this happened, when was it? 2008.
2008.
Okay, so you had passed your.
Yeah.
You're like 2005, 2007. Hey, it's still alive.
Still alive, but then it was they just launched successfully, so we were kind of happy, ecstatic.
Yeah, I heard.
However, the Falcon 1 is not going to be making money for SpaceX because their original business model was to build a lot of cheap rockets for the U.S. Air Force to use as targets for their target practice, for their missile defense target. But then each rocket, they'll probably make a profit of like $1 million maybe at most.
Is that a lot or little?
Very little.
$1 million sounds like a lot of money.
Well, Elon burned like $100 million. SpaceX. So to make a few $1 million a year, it's not really going to be able to sustain the company. So Elon decides that the space space shuttle is going to be retiring soon. I think we should build a spacecraft.
This came out of the blue?
I'm sure they all thought about it before, but
you heard it one day.
Yeah. So we're gonna apply for submit the proposal to NASA for the spacecraft, for Dragon spacecraft.
Do you remember when that was announced, how people at SpaceX felt? Like, I could see either of them being, that's amazing, let's do it. And other people be like, what the heck? Like, why are we doing this?
No, people are they're just happy to be just doing whatever. It's like,
oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe people at the higher management level, they're thinking about it. But then for us, it was like a new thing, I think. Because, you know what? I think one of the things that is transpired this going to spacecraft was because Tom Mueller was the VP of engineering at the time, he was from TRW, they were primarily building the thrusters for the spacecraft back then, satellites and things like that. So maybe, hey, thinking of satellites and spacecraft, we could build a propulsion system for the satellites. Let's build a spacecraft. So the name Dragon spacecraft came from Puff the Magic Dragon. Yeah, just like Elon, he thinks of these weird, quirky names.
Yeah, the ship that catches the rockets, I think it's like P.S. I still love you, or I don't know. It's like some weird name.
Oh yeah. Yeah, from the novel, space novel. Yeah.
Oh, it's from the space novel.
Yeah.
I know his favorite book is like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Puff the Magic Dragon.
So it was good. So we even had like the Magic Dragon logo in the beginning. So this Dragon spacecraft, hey, we needed somebody to design up the propulsion system, and then I kind of semi-volunteered, I guess.
So you raise your hand.
Well, I mean, I was like a default designer because I was the one doing the like upper stage design for the Falcon 1. So it kind of fell on me to design it.
And how did you feel at that time when it fell on you?
I've never designed a spacecraft. I've never designed anything like this, but I guess I could do it. Learn by doing. That was my school's motto.
That's really interesting because, a general thing that I've been seeing in Korea is there is kind of a fear of trying something and failing. And then what will other people think about me? They will think of me as a failure. So you lived in Korea until 7th grade.
Yeah.
So that probably was embodied in you. And here, fast forward to SpaceX, you're being told to build this like spacecraft, which you've never done before. But you were like, oh, let's grow.
Yeah.
How did that happen? How did such a big change happen?
That mindset?
Yeah. This like imperviousness
living in
to
America?
failure.
Culture? Yeah. Because in Korea, if you fail, you get punished. In America, you fail, you just try again.
I guess in some places.
In some places.
Like Boeing.
In Boeing, let me see. If we fail, somebody will catch it. And then you shift the blames across the whole company.
You distribute it.
Yeah.
So in effect, you still continue to, you can still like try and make issue. But in Korea, how would that be different?
Oh man.
So someone catches it, does it get distributed?
I did an internship in Korea for about 3 months. I worked at a Daewoo Motor Company.
Oh.
Well, I couldn't say really work. I was just there kind of
So you
observing
do
others.
have experience working in a Korea?
Yes.
Okay.
And I cannot say that I had the full experience of working in Korea.
Sure. We're just learning about your experience.
Let me see. Yeah, the failure is gonna be looked upon favorably. I remember one time, as an intern, one of the tasks that I was to build up a prototype engine for test engine.
Okay.
This was the car engine, right? So I was building it with the technician, which I wasn't supposed to because I was an engineer. They had a strict rule, only the technicians could touch the hardware. Anyway, but then I was working on it. And that part where I had to install the seal for the water pump, I forgot to install it. So when they started testing the engine, the water was spewing everywhere. I didn't get blamed for it.
Really?
The technician got blamed for it.
And then what happened?
I don't know what happened, but I think that was a bad day for the technician.
So if that same thing happened in Boeing or SpaceX, how would it have been different?
Probably not good I don't know. I mean, yeah, SpaceX, we made a lot of failures. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes. So things failed. Of course, we got better. Let me see. I think the pace of innovation was really fast. and we're doing a lot of iterations. So if it was just a very expensive one-time hardware and then things failed, then there'll be a lot higher stress.
Right.
And then that was the approach of Boeing. You analyze, execute really thoroughly and well so that you don't do failure.
Mm-hmm.
Which could be good on paper if you had unlimited resource. But I think the approach of just testing as often as possible, as long as you learn from each experience, I think that could be a good approach.
Right, and that was kind of more the approach at SpaceX.
Yes.
Okay, so you got assigned this role. You're like, okay, I guess I can try. I can try to make this.
Yeah. So when I first flew successfully in 20, what is that? What year was that? Like, yeah, I think about 5 years it took us, and then it flew for the first time, and went around the orbit and then returned. It was a very surreal moment. Like,
do you remember where you were?
Yeah, I was in the control room with other people.
And El Segundo?
Hawthorne.
Hawthorne.
Yeah, 2007, SpaceX moved to Hawthorne from El Segundo.
Okay, so you were in the control room, you're watching it, and this is not the first flight, because you said there were many flights where it didn't go well.
This was the first flight of the Dragon spacecraft.
Oh, it was?
On Falcon 9.
Okay,
yeah.
So it was the first flight.
Yeah.
And you're watching it, and like, what's going through your mind? Because I've watched a few of these launches, and I see the people in the control room. I was wondering, what are they thinking?
The launch is not the exciting part for the spacecraft designers. The launch is for the boosters, right?
Okay, so you're just like, okay, I'm just waiting for my moment.
Yeah.
So it goes up, and then
when the spacecraft separates, that's when the action begins for the spacecraft.
Okay, so then you're like, you're watching very carefully.
Yeah. So for that, I think it took about 30 minutes, and they made one orbit of the Earth, and then returned, and then it splashed down, and a lot of things had to go right because all that deorbit burn and all that. Then because I was the designer for the spacecraft thrusters too.
Oh.
Dragon spacecraft.
So it detached, it's in space, you're watching from the control room.
Yeah.
Like, what is going through your mind? Please don't explode, please don't explode.
That, and if things are not working, then spacecraft could spin out of control. And then it could burn up in the atmosphere as it re-enters. And then if the parachute didn't work, it would just crash land. But somehow everything worked out. And
so do you remember how you felt when it's like coming down, you see the fire kind of going, and then the parachutes come out, and then it lands softly. Do you remember like what you were thinking or feeling at that moment?
Oh yeah, vividly.
Well, tell me about it.
It's just very surreal. Like, did we actually do this? Did we actually do this? That was a thought that I had in my mind.
And I'm sure everyone around you is cheering like crazy.
Yeah. And yeah, it's not something that we had all the heritage, Boeing, this buzzword that always pops out is a heritage, legacy. We did this before.
Oh, interesting, because I think nowadays legacy kind of has a negative weight.
And Boeing, it had like the very assuring, positive tone. Right. Heritage design means that it has worked in the past, it has been thoroughly tested and analyzed, and then we have the heritage design.
Right. Like, so, we've done this much in the past, we can do this much, we can keep doing this much.
Yeah, so during the time when Boeing and SpaceX were proposing this spacecraft concept to NASA heavily favored Boeing because of this heritage design.
Yeah.
Hey, Boeing did it before, it worked.
Yep.
I'm sure they could make it work, and still not flying. Right? Well, I mean, the CST-100 is flying, but then, the astronaut version of it still not flying. Not carrying astronauts.
Yeah. And so this is the culmination, like you said, of 5 years. 5 years of work. And this is the first time it launched.
Yeah.
So I think people may not realize like 5 years is not a short amount of time. Like you're working on something, testing, whatever. And then to see the culmination of that moment and then boom, you're like,
Yeah. A lot of people work really hard to make that work. And then, so I think the first flight was very special because we actually worked with a very skeleton crew, very minimal crew.
what would be the normal amount? Like if Boeing had taken this project, how many people would it have been? And how many people did you guys do it with?
I told you, when they developed the Apollo spacecraft, it was 30,000 people working at the Downey facility here.
Okay, so 30,000.
Yeah.
And then you guys.
I think Dragon spacecraft up to that point, we had about 200 people.
200 people versus 30,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the important thing is to get the first thing working. I mean, it wasn't perfect, right? And there were a lot of things that were very crude. However, once you get the first concept working, then it attracts a lot smarter people to optimize and improve. So the Dragon spacecraft now flying, it's a lot better. It's the second version than the first one. And then I'm sure with the
Starship,
it's going to be a lot better.
Wow.
So technology improves and things change.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great story. I mean,
Yeah, so from SpaceX, so Dragon spacecraft, we finished the Cargo Dragon version. And then after that, we started working on the Crew Dragon version in 2014, 2015 timeframe, which was another challenge because we were given this. The form factor was about the same, maybe a little bit taller than the cargo version. Number of components was twice as many. So we have to pack in twice as many components into this similar form factor. So a lot of packaging challenges.
did nobody push back and say like, hey, this is twice as much, like we can't do this?
I think there was pushback. There could have been pushback, but then I think everybody understood that you cannot make it any bigger because it's like you're chasing
I see.
the chicken or the egg, because if you make it bigger, it's going to be heavier, which means you need more propellant to do the work. If you have more propellant, you need more bigger space. So you have to come to you have to set a specific boundary.
Yeah, I see.
Then try to make it work.
Wow.
So we did a lot of crazy things, very unconventional things in spacecraft.
Do you remember like one example that just...
One example. So because I was, in charge of the thrusters, Elon's mandate was cut down the number of thrusters to minimum. So we went down to 12 thrusters to the basic maneuvering system. And then we ended up with the 16 final number of thrusters.
From how many?
Compare that to Boeing. Boeing had 50-some thrusters.
Wow, that's a huge reduction.
And each thruster costs about $300,000 to $500,000.
Wow.
So, I mean, Boeing basically got paid twice as much money from NASA to do the same work that SpaceX was doing.
Wow.
Not that they were making more profits, but because it costs that much more.
I see.
So to get that thrusters with all the redundancies, we had to work with GNC, which is a guidance navigation, to make sure that even with the small amount of thrusters, you have all the redundancies, you are able to control the spacecraft in a reliable manner. We had to go through a lot of iterations. But that iteration between the propulsion, I was doing packaging. So thruster design, thruster packaging, and guidance navigation. I'll design something up, position the thrusters, send it to GNC. They'll do all the
Sorry,
simulation.
what is GNC?
Guidance, navigation, control.
Okay.
So that's basically
It's another team.
Another team.
Okay.
But team meaning I was a propulsion. he wasn't there's one guy.
When you say GNC, it makes it seem like a team of like 30, 50 people. You're just like, I am Bob. I'm
Yeah.
GNC.
Well, I mean, they have all different tasks, responsibilities,
Right.
but there's one guy, that was charged at GNC of this spacecraft. So I'll do the layout, send out the file of all the coordinates, like a unit vectors of all the thrusters, send it to him. He'll run the simulations. He'll tell me. And then we also had a guy from, another department, right? So we'll be working as a team, and they'll figure out, well, with this kind of arrangement, hey, yes, I think we have enough propellants to make it work. All the, I guess, the profile, the trajectories, right, and the flight profile, and re-entry and everything, all the contingency cases. So it'll be back and forth. And then he said, oh, it's not gonna work. Then could I twist it this way? See, the thing is, as I reposition the thrusters, I had to think about all the thermal implications, structural implications. So I also talked to the spacecraft structure guy department, but then a guy, and then the thermal guy, and then I think we worked very efficiently. So being able to go through all these iterations in a very timely manner, so we finally came to a reasonable agreement. Hey, this will work. Yeah, and then that's how it ended up being.
Wow.
So we had the 12 thrusters around the spacecraft, but then at the end of the day, yeah. But then that's one example. But then there are very unconventional design practices that Boeing would never do if I think about it.
What do you think that doing these kind of unconventional things and then having it actually working, and then you're realizing you're beating these huge competitors, like what was that doing for the team? What was that doing for you, of like the sense of value of like, I'm assuming it would say like, man, this is crazy, but it's working.
Yeah.
Let's keep doing it, or wow, like we can really do amazing things.
I mean, that kind of sense of relief when the spacecraft first flight it returned, it's like, oh, we made it work. It was a huge sense of relief. It worked. That made me think, you know what, like taking risk at times, it pays in huge dividend. So don't be afraid to take risk, and don't be afraid to try different things. And you'll learn if that was a good decision or a bad decision. Like one bad decision, Elon had a mandate. This Dragon spacecraft is supposed to have a helicopter-like precision to land.
Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't a good decision.
Helicopter-like precision?
Meaning, when the spacecraft returns from the space and lands, he wanted to land on a landing pad.
Okay. That sounds pretty good.
So imagine you're an astronaut.
Okay.
And this spacecraft has very limited amount of propellant, right?
Oh.
So for it to re-enter, that's fine. Enter the terminal velocity, which means it's like traveling at like hundreds of miles per hour. And like a few seconds before it lands, it has to fire up these thrusters.
Oh, to soften the landing, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a
I think
7 seconds before.
I think Blue Origin, their thing does that. Like before it lands, it goes, and then it softens their landing.
It does. But that's a booster with a huge tank, propellant tank. This is a spacecraft. Besides, this spacecraft propellant is very toxic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Anyway, so it lands, it fires up, so you really don't have a chance if it doesn't work. If there's any malfunction, then you're screwed.
Oh.
Would you really risk your life, the life of astronauts, to land like a few seconds before it lands?
Wait, but then there's a parachute though. There's already a parachute.
No, there's no parachute. It's a propulsive landing.
Oh, shoot.
Because that's how it's supposed to land on Mars. So if you look at the old, like a Mars colony concept by SpaceX, you'll see a bunch of Dragon spacecraft like landing there, forming a colony. That was the original concept.
Got it.
Which is a bad idea, so I would have easily said that's a dumb idea. But Elon wanted it, so we try to make it work. So we are sizing the tank and all that, try to make it work. But so we did spend like a half a year or a year like really trying to solve this
Wow.
problem. Then came Falcon 9, reusable Falcon 9 that landed. Hey, we don't need a spacecraft to land anymore. So that's the beginning of the Starship. Yeah, that was a much better idea to land because you could manage the propellant much better. And then you could use the aerodynamic profile of the booster as a flying ship. So yeah, so once that worked, then yeah, that quickly changed. We didn't need that propulsion landing, but something like that.
I heard, I remember reading in Elon's book, like when he would have like these crazy ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them, a lot of them wouldn't work, but some of them would. So it's just kind of crazy. But the people around him, if they said, no, we can't do that, he would just like get rid of them. And then he would look for people who would do it. And then they would try it. And if it didn't work, then he'd be okay with like, okay,
Yeah.
let's change courses. But
Yep.
but if you said no from the beginning, he would just like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
find someone else who will do this.
That's right. Yeah. I think that's a kind of different mindset between working for a large aerospace company versus the new. Yeah, he wasn't afraid to try different things. All aerospace companies, they're very limited by this heritage because they don't want to waste money, right? The thing is, this concept of wasting money is that they don't want to try idea that hasn't been tested. But thing is, the old ways cost a lot of money. So what is waste in the end? Not trying the new things to save money or just trying to prove an idea?
And I think that comes down to human psychology.
It does.
Also, it's, yeah.
Who takes responsibility?
Yeah.
If you had the top guy, hey, I'm willing to take a risk, I'm willing to do this, then you could easily move, right? But then who is Boeing reporting to? Shareholders.
And it's really hard to explain this.
And the CEO of the Boeing Corporation, his intent is not to really push the boundaries of technology. His intent is not to really push whatever the goals of the company.
Yeah.
His main goal is to make the shareholders happy.
Right.
By increasing stockholders' value.
And contrasting that to Elon, what he really wanted, to the point where he burned $100 million of his own money.
Yep.
And what he wanted, well, what he says on Twitter all the time is being a multi-planetary species.
Yeah.
So you being there, some people are like, that's not what Elon really believes. He's just a faker. He's just, he just wants publicity and stuff. From your understanding, so I have my own belief, but I'd be curious to, like, from your belief, do you believe that that's what he actually believes in? That's what he really wants?
His initiatives?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think he really had any change in his mind about building a colony in Mars, become a multi-planetary species. I mean, he repeats that from his company meetings every time, and then everything, even Tesla building Starlink. Starlink was initiated to become a revenue source to fund this idea of a Mars colony. Yeah, because Starlink it was supposed to generate a lot of revenue for the company. No, I think it is.
Yeah.
And then I think that's what's really building up boosting up the SpaceX share values. So,
but that's like, what's interesting is from, let's say, the Boeing CEO perspective, that would be the goal. But for Elon, the Starlink is not the goal. It's the means to help you get to the goal.
Exactly, yeah. So that's where I think I want to spin off to a different story of like where I am today.
Yeah.
With the different, how I see the work.
Yeah.
How I see what I have, my life goals. So for me, space was really cool. It was interesting. But I think as I entered into my midlife, I had to think about what do I really want in life.
So midlife, do you remember what age you started feeling this way?
Mid-40s.
Mid-40s, so around 45.
Yeah, early 40s, mid-40s, because, looking at the retirement, right, in 10, 20 years, like, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
And then, spacecraft was fun, but I think I wanted to do something that was really meaningful. So 2019 comes, and then this is my opinion. So I wouldn't say that this is what the company did or company what actually intended, but going from Dragon spacecraft, there were two main projects that were happening at SpaceX at the time. So Falcon 9 development was finished, so mainly it was a production phase. Dragon spacecraft, was finishing up the development and design. So now it's like doing a regular operations and then not even production because it was going to be reused. They were going to only build like 1 or 2 spacecraft per year, just to satisfy the NASA requirement that they have to, fly a fresh spacecraft every time. So the design and development was coming to close. So a lot of the booster side, the Falcon 9 crew, moved on to working on the Starship.
Oh, yeah.
And if you think about the Starship, a lot of the technologies that were gained from the Falcon 9 development was, transferable to the Starship. Not so much for the Dragon spacecraft. It was a little bit different. First of all, different propellants. It was storable propellants, meaning that they were using a type of rocket propellants that were only that you didn't have to chill down, like in a cryogenic.
So that means lighter. I'm assuming cryogenic and stuff that requires more weight and all that.
Cryogenic means that you don't have to keep it at like a minus 270 degrees, like cold temperature.
Right.
So storable, yeah, you could store it at room temperature, but then it's highly explosive, highly toxic. So it requires different kind of technical skill sets to design those kind of things. I thought that we were going to move on to a lot of the Dragon, people who are involved in the Dragon design and development, they were going to move to a Starship, but then they had a layoff because I think a lot of the positions were already filled. So in my opinion, I feel that they're trying to trim down the crew on the Dragon side, except the people who really had the transferable skills to a Starship. So yeah, I was part of the layoff in 2019. I cannot complain about the compensation for the years of services. I mean, compensation is way beyond like my imagination.
Right.
So,
I mean, at that time, I mean, you were at one of the founding kind of engineers at a now multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah.
So, money-wise, that's not a worry anymore.
Money-wise, it was not a worry. My only regret was that I was laid off before they actually launched the first Crew Dragon, which I worked on for the past 5 years, and then I got to enjoy that with other people, being successful.
Right.
The crew launch.
Right.
Yeah. So. Yeah, my only wish is that they had delayed that little bit, just so that we could experience that. But anyway.
Did that surprise you that they did it that way and didn't allow you to wait?
That was a surprise, yeah. That was a surprise because one day they said everybody, the entire company, just pack your stuff and go home because you may not come back tomorrow. That's what they said. And that night, 10 o'clock, they sent out the email of who will be returning to work.
Wow. So this sounds like really interesting because the interesting point that I see is at this point in 2019, they are profitable. They're making.
Oh yeah.
I'm assuming they're making a lot of money. They could afford to be, I don't know, more nice, humane. Like, hey, like Justin, you worked on this. We're gonna extend you out at least until then. But they didn't do it that way.
No.
They just cut it.
I mean, even before then, they had several waves of layoffs before. So I really understood the intent of that. It really keeps only the motivated, only the ones who are really relevant to the company's future in the company.
Do you think that's an important factor of SpaceX's culture and success?
Yes, definitely.
So it's kind of a two-edged sword.
It is. Yeah.
One is, it's amazing. You work with the most amazing people.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it will cut you off.
Yeah, if I'm not needed anymore, then I'm cut off. So
without any nostalgia, without any like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's just part of the job.
So when that happened to you, obviously you were disappointed, but it doesn't seem like it was.
I was disappointed, but I was not disappointed because at the time, what Elon's vision about like Mars colony and things like that, it wasn't really, it was exciting for me as a young engineer and then as a child, but that really wasn't really hit me. Like I
So
wanted
you
to
have
do it for
changed.
I have changed.
Yeah, you changed over time.
Yes. For me, I think what was more meaningful is how can I help other people?
Where did that
With
come
my
from?
life.
When did you start feeling that? Was it while you were at SpaceX or even before then?
I think even before that, I was really into like mentoring others, especially younger people, help them to live more quality life, being able to get a job that they really were passionate about. So I was, helping even set up a ministry at my church to help people, learn how to write resumes, do the interviews, get a job.
And how did that start? Did someone come to you and say, hey, Justin, can you help with this? Or did you want to do this?
I had a high school friend, and then he was actually initiating this thing at his own church about, it was simply called How to Get a Job. And his idea was that, you know what, young people these days, they cannot find a job, they don't know how to get a job, so they're not getting a good job, but you have to be able to have a good income to build a family, and then that makes the church stronger. So that was the really very simple mission of the ministry. Help people get a job. But then I realized over time that it really doesn't matter what you teach them. If their mindset is not right, then it's not going to really be much helpful.
That is so interesting because I feel like a lot of I'm kind of in the indie hacker, solopreneur, those world, and many of them, you see kind of two things. One is very tactical things like, this is the 7 best ways to do marketing on Instagram, or, you see those. The other things that you see, and I think you often see this with more of the successful who have made more money and stuff, they'll talk about mindset. And I remember seeing this and I'm like, why are they talking about having like a positive mindset? Like, why is that important? Like, don't you need the tactical things?
Yeah.
So you talk about mindset and you just mentioned that. Why is that so important in your opinion?
It's very important because so now through like helping these people, right? And I see people who are succeeding versus who are not as successful. I see the people who are succeeding and moving toward their goals in life tends to be very passionate about what they do. They have this learning attitude. They have this sense of ownership. They're very driven.
It's all attributes that I think you have found made you successful as well.
I think so.
Ownership.
Yeah.
Growth.
Yeah. The thing is, the problem for me was with my Christian faith, I also believed in individual personal value, meaning that I didn't believe that like you are destined to live like this because you're born like this. I believe that God has given potential to everyone to succeed in their own ways, right? And I believe that it is a matter of your choice to take the initiative, take the step.
Yeah. That's interesting because I think that balances against the other kind of Christian doctrine or kind of controversial thing about predestination. Like, God, you're ordained to, or for whatever. They know God knows what you're going to do. So someone can look at that and say, well, shoot, if my destiny is already, decided, then why do I have to try? So, but what was really interesting is I remember I heard a sermon from John Piper, and his kind of explanation thing is, no, I actually think the opposite. If I'm predestined, like let's say someone's going to go to hell, someone's going to heaven, maybe that's true. But if that's true, I don't know who it is yet. I don't know who is destined to go to hell, and I don't know who is destined to go to heaven. So I'm going to try my best to get everyone to go to heaven because I don't know who it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's getting to a discussion of theology and salvation. I think that's going to be like maybe for another topic. But if we come back to the work, like what we are destined to work, do in this life. I'm a strong believer in this parable of the talents in the Bible.
Yep.
Like one person was given 1 talent. Then because he thought he had this worldview that this world is hostile, evil, his master is an evil person, So he just buried it, and then later when the master returned, he just gave one talent back. And the master scolded him, saying, "Such a lazy servant, you could have just invested and then you could have gained another talent. So wasting your talent."
Yeah.
But he commended the other two people. One had 2 talents, returned back with the 2 talents, the one with the 5 talents, returned with the 5 talents, because they did their best with what they were given.
Right.
And then I think I have hold a similar view in my life. We come into this world with nothing. We're going to leave with nothing. But then we are given something during this life. And then I think God has given us that something to do something about it.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do about it?
I think that is tied to this kind of idea of predestination. Some people will say, if I'm predestined to be poor, then what's the point? I'm not even going to try. But some people say, oh, I'm predestined to be rich. But then the point of John Piper's point could be, you don't know which one you're going to fall into. So you might as well do the best that you can with what you have.
That's very true. Yes, what you can. But then I also want to measure the measure of success or measure of whether you're poor or rich.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go by the dollars in your bank. I would go by your mind. Are you poor in your mind or are you rich in your mind?
What does that mean? Unpack that.
So here's a poverty mindset. Poverty mindset usually think of a very limited world. You know what? I was handed a shorthand, right? This is all I have. So let's say, hold on, let me close it.
Oh yeah, I think the person next to us pressed it and somehow activated your card. That is weird.
It does that all the time.
Oh really? That's the first time I've seen it.
I have 3 Teslas at home, so when I open the button on my charger, all 3 opens up.
I feel like that's like a security thing. Anyway.
It's getting hot.
Yeah.
Okay, so poverty mindset.
Yeah, poverty mindset.
So poverty mindset usually think of this world as like a slice of pie. You have a limited.
Sorry. Oh no, it's okay.
Press it. I pressed something.
No, you're good. I'm just gonna. It's
getting hot.
There we go.
So the attitude is they hold on to things they already have, and then they are very protective of what they have, and then so it also has to do with the jobs too. This is what I've been doing. I'm always gonna do this. I'm comfortable with what I'm doing. I don't want to change. This is a poverty mindset.
Okay.
Even with people who have a lot of money in the bank, they're very scared of losing that. And then when they think of management, that means just maintain that balance as long as possible.
Interesting.
But the rich people, I think they are free to share with other people. They're free with themselves too. Right? So if this is something that I want, for example, you told me that you got a Tesla in Korea, right? Even with limited resources. You wanted it. That was very important to you. You made a decision. If you had a poverty mindset, you care very much about the balance in your bank because that gives you security. Security is the most important quality in the poverty mindset.
It's like, I don't want to lose.
Yes.
I don't want to lose anything.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is that can extend the way people think about poverty mindset is money, bank account. I don't want to lose any of this money, so I'm going to store it in my bank account. It's kind of like that guy who buried his talent.
Exactly.
So it's that mentality. But also in the management perspective, which is interesting what you're saying, they still have that mentality of, I don't want to lose anything. So I don't want to try any new techniques because I might lose.
That's manager mentality versus entrepreneur mentality. They're different. Yeah. Employee mindset versus entrepreneur mindset. That's different.
So an entrepreneur understands that, yes, you may lose it, but you also may gain.
Entrepreneurs, so the rich mindset, always think about, you could always grow the pie. This world is not limited. The world that God has created is not limited. The world that God has given to you, the life that God has given to you, it's not limited. If you want, if you choose to, you could increase it.
So even with the poverty mindset, one of the reasons that they don't want to change, or another element of the poverty mindset is, I want to take as much as I can because there's a fixed amount.
Yes, exactly.
And I want to steal as much because I don't want to lose it. Where a growth mindset is, hey, we don't have to fight against each other. Let's create more opportunities.
Exactly.
So both of us can win.
Yeah. So you're Tesla. I don't think that was just a frivolous spending for you, because I think what Tesla gives you is a lot of value to you. It could give you more things to talk about, more opportunities, right? It's not just about a car. It's about how you feel about it, how that affects your family. So I think the concept of creating value, and then that's how you create the pie, right? So entrepreneurs think in different ways. So that is the difference between the poverty mindset versus the rich mindset. And I think being an employee for a long time, I was kind of open to the idea. So it's not just a few people who could succeed, who happen to have these amazing qualities, right? Can everyone succeed in life? Can everyone really pursue their dreams? Or do they even think about dreams?
Yeah, I mean, I was about to ask, because you said, can people succeed in life? I think people's definition of success is different. Like when you said that, can people succeed in life? Like, what is your definition of success?
All right. So I think this is what I learned. When people think of succeeding in life and the definition of success, more often than not, people think of the success as defined by other people.
Ooh.
And people don't realize that. They think that that's their definition of success. People think that you are successful if you get into Harvard. Do you really want to go to Harvard? Do you know what the school's like? Do you really know what you're going to be learning from there?
Yes.
People think that you'll be successful if you get hired by Tesla, or if you get hired by SpaceX, or if you get hired by this, Boeing or whatever big companies. Do you really know what it feels like to go there? Do you really work in that environment? Are you suitable for that environment? And people think that if I go into business, I want the independence. So if I open up a business, then I'll be happy. But do you really know what it takes to build a business? So people don't really think about what they want and why they want to do it. And then they do it because other people say that is successful. So thing is so they work really hard, right? Hey, I built up a $1 million asset in my bank. And then people look back and say, did this really make me happy? They're not. Because they're pursuing the success and dreams that other people have defined for them.
Yeah. Yeah, this reminds me of, I was in Korea, and then my friend is an entrepreneurship professor, and he asked me, can you do a lecture on first principles? Because he knows I know I like Tesla, and I know I like Elon. And so I'm like, So I had to Google, and I had to learn about this. And basically, it breaks down into first principles and reasoning by analogy.
Can you explain that to me?
Yes. So reasoning by analogy, and reasoning by analogy is basically how the vast majority of people learn, how babies learn. This person opened the bottle this way. I'm just going to open the bottle the same way. I'm not going to try to create a new way of opening the bottle. So I'm going to do what they did.
Experience, yes.
The pro of reasoning by analogy is very fast. Very fast. A child sees, I didn't know, a great example is Tesla Model 3, the door.
Yeah.
Almost everybody has trouble opening the door because you have to actually, the door handle is flat.
Yes.
So you have to press on one side. You have to press on the side closer to the rear door, and then it pops out, and then you grab the handle. But most people don't know this, so they don't know how to open it. So, but reasoning by analogy is you start looking at it, and you watch other people. They open the door this way, so I open it with my thumb. I press the fat part, the handle comes, and I grab it with my 4 fingers. So I learn by reasoning by analogy. So I see other people, and that's how the vast majority of the world learns. Now, the con though, there's a big con. The con is sometimes, just because the world did it, it's not the best way. There's a better way. It's just the first person that figured out that method, they're just like, oh, it worked. But they didn't explore all the different methods. They just explored this one.
Yeah.
And so, and also their situation can be very different from my situation.
That's true.
And so, same thing what you just said. Oh, that person, what made them happy was to be a rock star and first go to Berklee College of Music.
Yeah.
I should go to Berklee College of Music, reasoning by analogy. But then you go there and you're like, I hate this place. And so then you move to first principles, which is basically like you break down everything and say why. You ask a lot of why questions. And I think Elon's like really, really good at that, of just asking like, why do we need this? Why do we need this? And it's like, so reasoning by analogy, opening, let's say a bottle, it's like, what are we trying to accomplish here? Oh, we're trying to get to the drink inside. Well, why are we trying to get to the drink inside? Oh, because we want to drink it. Okay. Do we have to twist the bottle? That's one method.
Yeah.
Can't I just cut off the bottle? Do I need to reuse this bottle again? So this kind of, it's a very first principle. So the pro is you think of very innovative solutions.
Yeah.
Because by definition, you're looking at other methods. You're looking at different problems. The con is it takes a lot of energy and time. So if humanity used first principles for everything, they wouldn't do anything. They just stay there and just try different things. So like you said earlier, there's a balance between which tool you use and when.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is, or just theoretically, reasoning by analogy, low impact, low risk things, just use the analogy. Just make quick decisions. But very high impact, very customized situations like, what does success mean for me? What does happiness mean for me? That's like the biggest question of your life. That thing, you probably don't want to use reasoning by analogy, or you can use that as a beginning step, but eventually you do want to move to first principles and say, what does happiness mean for me?
Yeah.
What am I trying to accomplish?
So, after I finished SpaceX, I had about 3 months to think about what I wanted to do. And then I ended up getting a job at a couple other companies after that for about 3-4 year period.
So what I think is kind of interesting at this point is at that moment when SpaceX says, goodbye, you have enough money so you don't have to work for the rest of your life.
Right.
And yet you applied for jobs.
Yeah.
Why did you apply for jobs?
I didn't have anything else to do.
Because people could be watching this like, you were living my dream.
Yeah.
I met so many people who are like, I just want to retire. I don't want to work anymore. I don't want to work anymore. You're living that, and yet you applied for jobs.
There are two main things I think the reason I went back to workforce. The one thing was I wanted to do some engineering that I wish I had done. I initially started with a turbo pump valves, but then the turbo pump was a very interesting discipline that I wanted to really get into. So maybe I could work in that area a little bit more. And then I wanted to impart as much of what I learned over the years, about close to 30 years of my engineering career, to other young engineers, because I felt like I was a missing link between the old space and the new space.
Oh.
And then when I realized that, sure, SpaceX had a lot of efficiency, moving fast, but we did lose a lot of technology and science over those periods. The thing is, in the 60s and 70s, United States did a lot of researches. Example, rocket propellants. They had dozens of different combinations of different rocket propellants to, test and figure out like what is the most efficient, most effective. Now, there are only 2 types or 3 types, right? Either you use kerosene as a rocket propellant, or you use methane for the boosters. Just those 2 types. Even methane was considered very unstable. But now, because SpaceX started it, everybody's riding on that bandwagon.
So reasoning by analogy. Everybody's just doing it.
Even though it was considered, hey, that's very scary, because, the LNG explosions happen all the time in Korea. Liquid natural gas, liquefied natural gas. So that's kind of majority of that is methane. Even though SpaceX uses a pure methane versus LNG is used by Blue Origin. That's interesting. Yeah, they use a pure methane because you could synthesize methane on the surface of Mars. So SpaceX plan is to synthesize methane from the carbon dioxide on Mars and return back to Earth. Blue Origin doesn't care about Mars.
Right.
They only care about flying from here, so they use the cheapest form, which is LNG.
I see.
Anyway, it's like a dirty methane.
Got it.
So back to the story. What was I saying? Yeah, so I wanted to kind of work on some of the technologies, and then I wanted to
And also be a
impart those,
bridge.
bridge for younger. So I felt like I was doing that.
Did the idea of just retiring right away, did it enter your mind? Or I'm sure this is a decision that you and your wife you were thinking through.
Yeah, my wife didn't really care.
Okay, so your wife was whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so you were kind of struggling with this. Were you struggling with this on your own? Or did you have a group of people that you were kind of, talking with? And
Well, the thing is, so one company that I first started with, I had a bunch of coworkers who were working there, ex-coworkers. So worked there, but I think there are a lot of things that were not really fitting with me. For example, like the company culture or the political nature of it. So that company was leaning very heavily toward like a progressive liberal agendas. So they're like, pushing a lot of the LGBTQ and things like that,
Right.
which I didn't really feel that really belonged to workplace, in my opinion.
Right. It's like, hey, if that's personal, that's great.
Yeah.
But coming into the workplace, like, I think there doesn't need to be in here.
Yeah, the thing is, like, if I'm working with the man, woman, gay, lesbian, I don't really care as long as they do their jobs, right?
Right.
But then why would you have this like regular education to tell people that LGBTQ is like the right or whatever, right? And that was kind of weird.
Okay.
Anyway, that company doesn't exist anymore.
Sorry, this was a long time ago, or this was
After SpaceX.
oh after SpaceX? So you were looking at different jobs, and then this is the one that you went to.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So I was there for a couple of years, and then I moved on to another company. That was the last company, and then that company, it was interesting because they are really pursuing the additive manufacturing technology. So I thought, wow, again, because remember I started my career with the 3D design.
Yeah.
Additive manufacturing, I thought that was the future, right? Because before they're cutting down, 30,000 crew to 200 crew with the 3D design. Now they're cutting down thousands of manufacturing with a couple manufacturing crew with the additive manufacturing.
Yeah.
Because before, to build like complex machinery, they had a bunch of machinists machining a lot of different components and parts they're putting together. Now they just print it out.
Right. So is this like the 3D printing?
3D printing, but people are usually familiar with like a plastic 3D printing.
Yeah.
This is actually metals.
Wow.
Yeah. So they actually print out the working like a metal rocket parts with the exotic metals, right? And then complex designs. I really love the design aspect of it, and then doing all that. But then
So this kind of the fulfillment of you working on technical stuff, growing stuff, that was fulfilling.
that was
in that way.
fulfilling
Okay.
initially.
Okay.
As the company switched from, so company was founded on this like pushing the technology limit, right? But you know what? Company, they have to make profit.
Yeah.
So now shifted into more of a manufacturing viable form of
I see.
revenue generation, meeting the like a investor expectation.
Yeah. It's
So
almost like more like a Boeing feel.
it's different, but they really turned away from the original thing, right? So my job was kind of back into like those manufacturing and rocket and building rockets and things like that, which I didn't really quite like. So yeah, I was kind of losing interest, and then then came another like performance recommendations, like I need to improve and all that. Okay, well, I think it's time for me to go.
Was that hard for you to make that decision? Because you could have looked for another job.
It wasn't hard. I think it was a timing. So this is where my Amway business comes into picture, because my wife was a ballet instructor, So she had like multiple ballet classes that she was teaching. And then her health was declining. She was always tired. And then with the Amway business that she was introduced, they make really, really great quality supplements. Yeah, it may sound like a promotion, but then I have to tell you that this is the truth.
Hey, we're just hearing your opinion.
Yes.
Your story, that's all.
So Amway is a very special company because their supplement has a 90-year history, 90-year history. And it's very unique among, like, supplement industry is close to $500 billion industry in the US.
Oh, wow.
It's big, it's huge. If you go to Sprouts and all these Whole Food markets, multiple rows are dedicated to supplements and healthy products. So it's a big industry because people want to eat healthy, right?
Yeah.
What's unique about Amway is that they are only global manufacturer of supplements that operate their own organic farms that far exceeds the USDA organic standards.
So it's more vertical.
Vertical integration.
Yeah.
Similar to SpaceX.
Yeah. So instead of working with multiple, because I think Boeing works with a lot of different suppliers.
That's right.
And then the end product is like, it's kind of like a lot of compromises.
Exactly.
SpaceX was like, we're going to build it the way we want it.
Yeah.
And Amway is the same thing. It's like, all the supplies, I want to make sure it gets grown the way that I want to grow.
Yeah. So they don't even start from seed. They start from farm itself.
Wow.
They prepare the soil for 3 years before they start planting anything.
Wow.
They prepare the soil with the natural nutrients, like dozens of nutrients, right? It's not a chemical fertilizer. They don't use any pesticides. So they cultivate it with the nutrients and earthworms to prepare the soil for 3 years. Then they plant.
I mean, this is like organic to the next level.
So I could talk all day about their processes, but then, from like selecting the seeds to seedlings and then to the final product, they go through all this process. They have a lot of patents. So anyway.
So if you care about quality and organic, you might want to look at Amway.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. So my wife's health got better, right? But then for me, since 2019, I was like weighing 170 pounds. I wasn't feeling well, over 170 pounds. I wasn't eating healthy at SpaceX. I was spending all day. Like, I would report to work at 7 o'clock, leave at like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. So 12 hours a day. They have a really great cafe. They have a really great coffee bar. The bad thing is it's not really good for your health. Because when you're stressed out, when you're tired, you end up overeating. Then you end up drinking a lot of sugary things. Yeah, so my health wasn't great. I was feeling depressed. I had all the symptoms of late 40s and 50s. That's when, I meet people through Amway business. The people who are in 20s and 30s, they don't even listen oftentimes. They say they're healthy. I just need to do a little bit of exercise. The thing is, their life habits, when they turn to 40s and 50s, makes a huge difference. They suddenly start getting old, accelerated. Yeah. How old are you, Sam, by the way?
I'm 39.
39. Okay. So you will see your friends. I'm not telling you you're gonna be like that, but your friends, when they in their mid 40s, some of your friends will look like they're 50s and 60s. Gray hair, wrinkles, lethargic. So I was like that, right? Like, I was getting a lot of symptoms, and I didn't really believe in supplements or vitamins. I remember like 10 years ago, sometimes the old posts, I wrote my Facebook title, "Vitamins are scam." And I linked an article about it and all that, like, it hasn't effective. But then once I saw how my wife was improving, she recommended things. So I started taking some and started taking care of my health. And the end result is 5 years later, 2024, I'm weighing 145. I feel great. I'm into mountain biking. I could ride twice as much as before, and then feeling less tired.
Yeah.
Very energetic.
It's a very big, like, real world physical impact on you.
Impact on me. But important thing is, as I was going through those two, small companies, I was keep thinking to myself the question, why do I work?
Yes, and it's great because this is the topic I wanted to cover.
Yeah.
Especially for someone, because I know a lot of people, they're working because they have to. They're
Yes.
working out of survival.
Yes.
I need enough money, blah, blah, blah,
I
blah.
respect that.
Yeah,
Yes.
you respect that. But you're in a different life stage.
Yes.
And so it's almost like I want them to be able to get a preview
Yeah.
of one day, hopefully they'll make it to this position.
Yeah.
But what does life look like here?
Yeah.
So that they can make a better decision right now. So they can learn from you. So like they think life is going to be great. Once I have a huge bank account, life is easy. I'm going to just go fish. I'm going to go travel the world, blah, blah, blah. That's what most people say. And you're facing that reality, but you didn't end up doing that. So I would love to understand like your thought process of like.
My thought process was, what gives meaning to my life, right? I think I'll be okay with go fishing and whatnot, whatever. Yeah, doing whatever I love. That's fine. The thing is, I think, but in the end, I want to kind of say that I don't want people to learn from me about how I live my life. I want people to learn from me how I thought
Yes.
through this.
Yes.
And then really think for themselves what
Yes.
they want in their lives, right?
Yes.
So my thought process for me, living a meaningful life was important. I think building meaningful relationship in life was important. I think family was important. I think living a quality life was important, health-wise. So this could be another topic for another time, but I suffered from autoimmune disease when I was in my late 20s.
Oh.
So I was paralyzed completely from head to toe for about 2 months.
Oh my gosh.
It took me about 6 months to fully recover. So, and then that main cause for that illness, even though doctor couldn't figure out why I was sick or what the cure was, I think it was mainly due to stress. So how do you live a healthy life, right? So that was some of the main concerns. So as I was introduced to this, living a healthy life, taking care of my nutrition, I found value in this. But then more than that, it's not just about the product. I found through this business, Amway business, what it means to dream. Because the first thing that
What it
they
means to
teach you,
dream?
yes,
Dream.
dream. Because they said first thing they teach you in a business is, what is your dream?
Oh.
It took me a long time to come up with what is my dream?
Why did it take you a long time?
I think I was very used to living a life where like I just do what I was told. Even at work. Like I work because my manager told me to design a spacecraft. I do this because my manager told me to do this.
Yeah. You work at the dairy ring.
Yeah.
It's expected that you
Yeah.
help with the family.
Yeah, even though I had a sense of ownership, I had the initiative, doing all that. And then once I got married, I do whatever my wife tells me.
Happy wife, happy life.
Exactly. But then this business, they said, what is your dream? Like, what do you really want in life? And I think after thinking hard, I think I narrowed down to 3 things. Okay, so rest of my life, I want to continue to grow. So personal growth was the thing. And then I want to help others. Like I want to be helpful to other people. I really enjoy being helpful to other people. So
Do you think that's just a you thing, or do you think that's a humanity thing?
that was me thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that everyone should be like that. It was for me. Like I find this to be meaningful. I found this to be something that God has called me to do.
My hypothesis is different from yours. I think that humans were originally designed to be happiest
Yeah.
when we help others. Like there's a part of us that we unlock, or we have a hunger for, and we feel that because we were designed for that. But anyway, keep going.
That may be true.
So first was growth.
Yeah.
Second was help others.
Yeah.
Third,
thing was leaving a legacy.
leaving a legacy. Man, that could take a while,
Wow.
but yeah. What's a short definition of your understanding of legacy?
Well, that definition has evolved over time as well. So when I initially thought about it, because we had a financial means, right?
Yeah, because most times people think of legacy as
Yeah.
two things. One is a huge bank account to give to your inheritance.
Exactly. Yeah.
The second is to put your name on a building
Something
because
like
you
that.
donated to USC or whatever.
Leaving a name, so fame,
Yeah.
or leaving a money. So would that be meaningful? But then, thing is, again, I think that kind of ties back into like, that's kind of other people's dream, right?
Yes.
Like your dream depends on other people
Yes.
recognizing you, other
Yes.
people acknowledging that you're somebody.
Yes.
You made it.
It's external based.
External base.
You're
And
dependent on their
Exactly.
approval for your happiness.
Exactly. Yeah, that is a wrong. My belief, my personal opinion,
Yeah.
that is a wrong thing to pursue.
I agree with you.
because it's not going to completely satisfy you. So, my initial definition was this: okay, we had the financial means. Like, how do I leave this to my children or to other causes? Just the money-wise legacy. But over time, I learned that leaving a legacy, especially to my children, it means more than just money. It means how to think, how to look at this world. So the kind of mindset, right? And then the attitude. So one audio. So as I do Amway business, we listen to these inspiring audios and then of other people who are successful in this business. I remember listening to this audio of this one, very successful businesswoman in Korea. And then, not the woman, but then the son of the woman. He also became very successful in this Amway business too. So he said when he was like in high school or college, he saw they were having a family gathering. Let me see. Why was I going to this? We're talking about
Legacy?
leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
So they're having a family gathering, and everybody was just watching TV, just having a good time. But he saw his mom coming from a meeting, right? Coming from a meeting in a dress suit, or like a dress.
Kind of formal.
And then she quickly changed into like formal another dress, like business suit. She said that because she was going to another meeting to look after Amway business owners. She was a leader, right? So when he saw that, like while like everybody's playing around, like she's doing that, and then he was like processing, like why was she doing that? That kind of business, like very so passionate about her business, and she had a dream. And then she really wanted to pursue that dream. So that's a kind of legacy that he received from his mom. So I think what I want to pass down to my children is really showing them that, both my wife and I live and then do this business and then work for the cause that we really believed in.
Right.
And then that we are passionate about it, and that we are really making an impact and result based on what we did.
And I think the reason that's powerful is because, let's say their peers, they can be like, dude, your parents are, they got enough money, why? And then you're like, but they see you.
Yeah.
And they're like, they know that you could be chilling on the beach, drinking a martini, or margarita, but what they see you do is working hard.
Yeah.
And so now, even the world will say, oh, if you just have money, you're happy. They're seeing you have money, but yet you're still working. And so it'll probably put a question in their mind, like, why are my parents still working hard?
Yeah.
And then you tell them, I want to help others. And that in their minds, you don't have to try to convince them. They see it. And in their heads, in their value systems, they're like, money is not everything. I saw my parents. They have money, but they're still working because they're working for the higher purpose and goal.
Yeah. So that is our intention, to show them that you have to live for something that's meaningful to you, and that meaning is. So there's a difference between goals and purpose, right? The purpose is something that's above you. The goal is about what you want.
Right.
The purpose is, that goes beyond you. So living for purpose, I think purposeful living is something that we want to impart to our children. In the end, it could be helping others. It could be other things. But I think that's living a meaningful life. In the end, I think that's worth living. So that's what we want to impart to our children. And then with why I'm in business, because we saw obviously our health got better, so we want to help other people with health, but also helping them to think, like dream about what they want to do. And then Amway business in its core form, it's very basic. Anyone can do it. A lot of people have tried, very few succeeded, but everyone has equal opportunity. I'm a strong believer of equality, where it's equal opportunity.
Yeah. What you do with that opportunity
is totally up to you.
It's totally up to you.
And then when people think of Amway business, like get rich quick scheme, no, it's not. It takes very hard work. It takes a lot of personal growth on your part. So if you want to succeed and then be successful sustainably, you cannot but grow as a person in order to be able to build a network of trusted friends and then trusted network. You have to be very authentic. So it's very hard. It's very opening. And then you have to be authentic yourself. The thing is, anyone can try. It's very easy.
And I think your point is, if you do work hard at this Amway business, you kill two birds with one stone. One is you could potentially create a thriving business that will sustain you.
Yeah.
Okay. But number two, in order for you to do that, you have to develop these skills and values and traits, whether it's helping others, whether all that, and that just makes you a better person. So it's like great business makes you a better person.
Together. Yeah.
Together.
They cannot be separated. And another important factor, I think I have to leave soon.
Yes. I was about to say.
Maybe one last point.
Yeah.
Maybe tying back to very initial thing, how we started our conversation. What I learned in this life, what's important is not what you do, but who you become. So it's not about your accomplishments. At the end of the day, what have you learned? What kind of person have you grown into or matured into through all this process? I think that is really the measure of success. So I think people could say in different forms, right? Like, what would people say about you on your gravestone or on your eulogy, right? Leaving a legacy, I think that's like that. But it's not just about what I did, but what kind of person I become. And that's also ties back into the poverty mindset versus the rich mindset. Oftentimes I've heard people, especially in the Asian culture, the mom and dad would fight about very little trivial things. Mom would say, hey, why don't you do this? Why are you like that? And dad would say, I'm like that. I cannot change. Right? I'm who I am. Don't force me to change. I think that's a kind of fixed mindset. That's a poverty mindset. You could always change. And when you change, I think people usually don't change because of fear or of trying to get out of their comfort zone. But I think once you get out of the comfort zone, experience the changes in you and your growth, you're gonna see a different level of happiness in life.
With that, thanks for chatting with me for the past 2 hours.
Yeah, that was fun. I didn't think I had a lot to say, but
hey, that's my superpower.
Yeah. Kudos to you.
My final thing was, how was it for you this time?
It was fun.
Was this what you expected?
More so, yeah. I think I could have probably tell you more things, but this is enough for today.
Yeah. No, well, I'm always kind of thinking about, I want the experience for you, the interviewee, to be good. So, it makes me happy that you had fun.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I wish the video comes out okay for you.
It can only come out well because all you're doing is just telling your story.
Yeah.
That's it.
So you had how many subscribers now?
Oh, I don't know, like 70.
Okay. If we get 100 views on this, I'll be happy.
That's actually a lot. I only get like 10 views, so.
See, I don't have a fixed mindset.
I'm just telling you the average of
The
it.
growth mindset. So 70 subscribe to 100 views.
You know, I had thought about the numbers wise. I kind of worried about the number of views, but now I'm okay if even just one person who really needs to see this video, if that changes it, I don't care if it's 1 million viewers, if just that one person sees it, I'm so like, this is all worth it.
That's my business philosophy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my Christian faith, that's how Jesus operated as well. He transformed toward disciples, including Apostle Paul, and he changed the world.
I love it. I love it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Yeah.